So I have spoken periodically about Cyril of Jerusalem and his 15th Catechetical lecture. And what I want to do today is go to verse 22 of Cyril of Jerusalem's 15th Catechetical lecture and expose a lie that has absolutely deceived Christianity. I'm going to expose it, and I'm going to correctly identify scriptures that show what the sign that he spoke of really is. All right, it says, and I quote, "But what is the sign of his coming? Lest a hostile power dare to counterfeit it, and then shall appear, he says, the sign of the Son of Man in heaven." And as he puts it, now Christ's own true sign is the cross. A sign of a luminous cross shall go before the king, plainly declaring him who was formerly crucified, that the Jews who before pierced him and plotted against him, when they see it, shall mourn tribe by tribe. Zechariah 12, verse 12. So he accurately mentions this part where the tribes of Israel are going to mourn for him tribe by tribe, and that's indeed written in Zechariah 12, verse 12. But where is the scripture where he claims that the sign of the Son of Man is a luminous cross? Where is that scripture? It's not there. He can't find it. So he made it up. I'll go to the scriptures about the sign in just a minute. This is he who was buffeted. This is he whose face they spat on. As if the Gentiles had nothing to do with it. This is he who they bound with chains, as if the Gentiles had nothing to do with it. This is he who of old they crucified and set at naught, as if the Gentiles had nothing to do with it. You see, the cross, or the stauros, was the execution weapon or murder weapon of Rome. You see, a Roman weapon of execution. And when they will say, shall we flee from the face of your wrath? But the angel host shall encompass them, so that they will not be able to flee anywhere. This is what he says. This comes out of his own mouth. Does not in any way, you cannot find this anywhere in the Bible. The sign of the cross shall be a terror to his foes, but a joy to his friends who believed in him and preached him or suffered for his sake. Who then is the happy man who will be found a friend of, as they say, Christ the King, so great and glorious, attended by the angel guards, the partner of the Father's throne, will not despise his own servants, for that his elect may not be confused with his foes. He shall send forth his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather to his elect from the four winds. Once again, he posts a scripture. But those of you who've been listening to my YouTube channel, you know who the elect really are. All right? So, now, let's look at this carefully. The sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Where is that written? It is written in Matthew 24. So let's go there. Immediately, verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, and as I have pointed out many times ago, Israel's tribulation. There are two tribulations, one on Israel and one on the Gentiles. Paul even pointed it out. Shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars from heaven shall fall, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man. Wait a minute. Mourn? This says right here, it does say cut, strike off, beat my breast, lament. Why? Why? Why will they mourn? And he shall send his angels with then they shall see the Son of Man coming in the cloud, singular, of the sky with power and great glory, great honor, and he shall send his angels with the sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky unto the other. All right? So the sign, what is it? Well, we look at the word. Sign means sign, doesn't it? Yep. Let's first then go to Mark 13:24 through 27, where we find the same passage. But in those days, after that tribulation, versus the next one, shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and they shall see the Son of Man. Well, wait a minute. He skips right on over to, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great glory. And then he shall send the angels, and shall gather his elect from the four winds, from the furthest most parts of the sky, basically, and it says to the uttermost part of the heaven, which means horizon. That's what it really means here. All right. From one end of the sky unto the other, it says in another. Now we have to look at Luke 21. So we'll pull this back to Matthew. All right? Sign of the Son of Man. So we see it, the sign of the Son of Man is not written in Mark at all. Was there a mistake? Did words get put where they don't belong? What happened in Matthew? Well, let's look at Luke 21. And the sun and the moon will turn. No, it doesn't say that, does it? It says there will be a sign. The sign of the Son of Man will be in the sun and in the moon and in the stars. Notice the way Luke wrote this. Now, if we go to Matthew 24, it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven are going to fall. But Luke didn't say it that way. He said that the sign is going to be in the sun and the moon and in the meteorites falling out of the sky. Well, he didn't say meteorites fall. He just said, and in the stars, and the meteors. That's what Luke said. He worded it differently. He said that the sign would be in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and also Suneko or Sunoke / Suneko of the nations, the Gentiles. That's where the sign is. The sign is in the sun and in the moon and the stars. That's the sign of his coming. If you look at this carefully, at that time shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in the sky. What's in the sky? The sun, the moon, and the stars. This is a summary of what's happening right here. Matthew didn't make any mistake. Cyril of Jerusalem did what Peter warned the unlearned and unstable were going to do, to their own destruction. He took it out of context. You see, Luke made it very clear that the sign was going to be, see that word sign? The indication, the mark, the token was going to be in the sun and the moon and the stars, and also upon the earth, sunoke, a quarantining of the Gentiles. Now, as I pointed out, Jerusalem, as written in Zechariah, I believe, is like a brand plucked out of the fire. That's how Israel is going to be saved. So Israel, like in the plagues of Egypt, will be experiencing a little bit of the first ones along with the Gentiles, but will be plucked out of it. Now, so let's go back, and so we just destroyed this falsehood by Cyril of Jerusalem in his 15th Catechetical lecture. Lest a hostile power dare to counterfeit it. What is he saying? That Luke is a hostile power? When Luke points out that the sign will be in the sun and in the moon and the stars, and sunoke on the Gentiles? Funny how Cyril of Jerusalem left that out. All right, so as I pointed out, he's essentially claiming here that it was only the Jews who participated in Yahushua Moshiach's death. The Gentiles actually committed the act. So he said, the sign of the cross shall be a terror to his foes and joy to his friends, and who have believed in him and preached him or suffered for his sake. Who is the happy man that will be found a friend of, as he say, Christ or Christos, is how it is written in. All right, so he goes and says, that king so great and glorious, attended by his angel guards, the partner of his father's throne. He needs to be careful how he talks. The Father has no equal. Will not despise his own servants, for that his elect may not be confused with his foes. Okay, as I have done so many times before, let's look up the word elect. Let's see here. Well, you can see it right here in Isaiah 42, Isaiah 65, Isaiah 45, and Isaiah 65. Notice I put in there mine elect, because that's how it was written back in the days of King James, and how you only see it written that way in the prophets. So, or in the prophet Isaiah. So let's look at Isaiah 45. For Jacob, my servant's sake, and Israel, my elect, or mine elect, as it says in the original King James Version. So who among you are going to argue with our Father in heaven, the creator of heaven and earth and all things that are therein, and say Israel is not his elect? Which one of you? So let's look at Romans 11, the scripture that the Gentiles absolutely abhor. And I say that because you can't find a Gentile anywhere. Show me one. Who believes Romans 11? Well, I mean Gentile, I mean a Gentile Christian. Let's go to Romans 11. Let's go to Strong's Concordance. We'll start in the top first. I say then, has Jehovah cast away his people? Jehovah forbid. Because I'm an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Jehovah has not cast away his people whom he foreknew. Don't you know what the scripture says concerning Eliah? How he made intercession to Jehovah against Israel, saying, Jehovah, they have killed your prophets, dig down your altars, and I am left alone. They seek my life. But did the answer come from Jehovah, saying, I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. So even at that particular time, there was a remnant according to the election of grace. All right? So he says, what then? Israel has not obtained that which he seeks for, but the election has obtained it, and the rest were blinded. All right? Then he says right here in verse 11, I say, have they stumbled, the others among the Israelites, have they stumbled that they should fall? Jehovah forbid. But because of their actual temporary fall, as you will read in Romans 11, salvation is come to the Gentiles for to provoke them to jealousy. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the Hellenistic world, Western civilization, and the diminishing of them as a nation, the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? When is their fullness? At the end? So this isn't contrary to what Cyril of Jerusalem says. He says, that the sign of the cross shall be a terror to his foes, but a joy to his friends who have believed in him and preached him. Well, Jews despise the sign of the cross because it is an emblem of Rome, the mark of the beast. the mark of the Gentiles. And as do I absolutely detest the cross, the murder weapon, the mark of the beast. And so what he says here, he shall gather together his elect from the four winds, as I pointed out. I pointed out to you who the elect are in the prophets, but Cyril of Jerusalem did not. Paul said that Jehovah has not rejected the people whom he foreknew. No. Why then are the Gentiles saying that he did? So he goes and says, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Jehovah forbid, but rather through their fall, salvation has come to the Gentiles for to provoke them to jealousy. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the Gentile world, the Hellenistic world, the Western civilization, and the diminishing of them, the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? This is the one place where the Gentiles get stuck on. They're saying, no, there won't be any fullness of Israel. Yes, there will. And when the fullness comes, the war on the Gentiles by the Messiah also comes. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify by my office, if by any means I may provoke to emulation those who are my flesh and blood, and might save some of them at that particular time. Because if the casting away of them be the reconciling of Western civilization, what then shall be the receiving of them be but from life from the dead? Because if the first fruit is holy, he's a Jew, then the lump is also holy. That which he came from is also holy, the Jews. And if the root be holy, so are all 12 branches. Now, if the riches, diminishing of them are the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? I'm going to point to a scripture real quick and ask a question right here. Verse 11, I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness does he judge and make war. And his eyes were like a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written upon him no one was aware of or perceived, but he himself. Why is it that nobody knew? Well, the Jews didn't know, but the Gentiles didn't believe. It's because they call him the Antichrist. They did not know that this was the real Messiah. He was clothed with a vesture dripped in blood, and his name was called the Logos, or the speech of Jehovah. Jehovah spoke about this in the very, very beginning to Eve, how her seed that rose up among the Jews would conquer Satan's seed, which rose up among the Gentiles. Of Jehovah, and the armies which were in heaven followed upon him with white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. Where do you see a cross written here? Do you see one? No, you don't. There's no luminous cross going before him. Doesn't say it. And out of his mouth goes forth a sharp sword. That's a figure of speech. And with it he should smite all of his enemies, Israel, the Jews, right? Wrong. The Gentiles. Cyril of Jerusalem deceived you, Christians, and you followed him. He told you that the sign of the Son of Man was a sign of the cross, but Luke plainly said that the sign of the Son of Man was in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth, Sunoke of nations. That's what Luke said. Now, explain to me in what way does Cyril of Jerusalem supersede Luke? All right, so let's go back. And let's go back to Romans 11. And if some of the branches are broken off, and you being a wild olive tree, notice the term wild. Now, what I'm going to do just for a second here is look up the word the beast in Bible Hub. Beast. Which one should I use? The beast and the 10 horns. And we'll go with the beast. All right. This one. We'll do this one. All right. Now what I want to do is go to Strong's Concordance. I'm going to show you something here that you may not have seen before in Revelation 11 and verse 7 concerning the 2 witnesses, and after they have finished their testimony, that beast that ascends out of the Abyssos, which is the Mediterranean Sea. For those of you who are not familiar with Greek, the beast, Therion, wild beast. Wild beast. Now I'm going to go back to Romans 11. Verse 17, and if some of the branches are broken off, you being a wild olive. Wild. You see. It's not just the beast or the olive. It's wild. The undomesticated. That is in reference to Gentile. Were grafted in among them, and with them you take the root and the fatness of the olive tree. Do not boast against the branches, because if you boast, you don't bear the root, but the root bears you. Because you see, if you boast against the branches, you're boasting against the root. Why? Because the branches are Israelite, and so is the root. The branches are domesticated, and so is the root, and you are wild. You will say then that the branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off, and you stand by faith. Do not be high-minded. What he's saying here is, even by saying, well, the branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in, even to say that as a Gentile is being high-minded. You don't dare let such things come out of your mouth or in the thoughts of your mind. But fear. Be terrified. Be frightened to even think such a thing. Because if Jehovah did not spare those natural branches in that particular time frame, take heed lest he also spare not you as well. Look at the goodness and the severity of Jehovah. On them which fell severity, be it toward you goodness. And this one right here, folks, this is what Cyril of Jerusalem forgot to look at. If you continue in his goodness. Now, going around and chasing people around with a murder weapon is not continuing in his goodness. Now, Paul warned the Gentiles. You can't even lift up a word against the branches, because if you do, you are doing it to the Messiah. Where then does that put the cross carriers? It makes them the foes of the Messiah. And so, right here, you see Cyril of Jerusalem makes himself a foe. This is the reason why Paul warned them not to boast against the branches. If you continue in his goodness, otherwise you also will be cut off, and they will stay on. Not if they abide. No, they're going to stay on. And in fact, it says even before they stay on. Oh, I'm sorry. Before they abide in unbelief. Before they abide in unbelief, shall be grafted in again. Now, this is a passage that the Gentiles absolutely, utterly reject. This is a doctrine that I have been proclaiming on this YouTube channel for years, that the Gentiles absolutely are unable to accept. That Israel is going to be grafted in before they believe. But as I have pointed out to you many times, let's go over it again. And they, which means Israel, even also before, not if, you see that word? Before. Before. En me means before. Before they abide or stay on. Before. So he emphasized, he used the word twice. Before they abide in unbelief, or before they, let me see. While they are in unbelief, they will be grafted back in, because Jehovah is able to graft them in again. So we'll stop right here and we'll go to Scripture for backup. We'll go to the prophets for backup. Will be Ezekiel 39. And I will, verse 21, and I will set my glory among the Gentiles, and all the Gentiles shall see my judgment that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. So that the house of Israel might know, or shall know, Jehovah, their Elohim, from that day and backwards? No, forwards. How is he going to bring Israel back? How is he going to make them believe after he's already brought them back? When he sets his hand upon the Gentiles and lays his hand on the Gentiles that are trying to kill Israel. Who are these people who are trying to kill Israel? Trying to wipe them out as a nation? Who are these people? Well, let's go to... Oh, actually, hold on. It's right here. All right. I will send a fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the coastlands, so that they shall know Jehovah. Now, let's look at sons of Japheth, shall we? Oh, you didn't know I didn't even know I was going there either, quite frankly. But we have to look at, is it Genesis 9 or 10? Let's see. All right, I think it's 10. So check this out. New King James is fine. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Yerevan, or Yavan is Greece, and Yerevan is the capital of... I just slipped my mind. You know what? Go look up what Yerevan is the capital of, okay? Tubal, Meshach, Tyrus. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphtha, and Togarmah. Togarmah is where the Gog and Magog came from. Actually, no. I'll just continue. Yeah, that's right. It's the sons of Gomer. All right. Now, sons were Ashkenaz. I'll just continue. Sons of Yavan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. Now, this is what I'm getting to here. From these were the coastland peoples of the Gentiles were separated into their own lands, everyone according to his language, families, etc., into their nation. Now check this out. The coastlands of the people of the Gentiles. So now we go back to Ezekiel 39, and who is he talking about? Well, all these people today are, most of them are cross carriers. Folks, the coastlands of what? I will send a fire on Magog and among those that dwell carelessly in the coastlands. That is specifically the people of Yavan. But not only that, it would be Iran, Persia, Kush. That can either mean Africans or even Hindu Kush. But this right here, this fire is going to be sent on Magog and those that dwell carelessly in the coastlands of the sea. And they will know Jehovah. So these are the nations that Jehovah is going to lay his hand on to cause Israel to believe. Why? Because these are the people who persecuted Israel. So let's look at the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea, shall we? All right. Let's have a look. You see that? Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, and right smack dab in the middle of it, Rome. Rome, the big daddy of them all. You see, folks, and also the Germanic tribes. You know, if you, France and Germany are the same. They're Germanic tribes, and even much of Spain are Germanic. So the coastlands of the sea includes the Germans, and all these. These are all the sons of Japheth. They all are here. It's the sons of Japheth that are going to get the fire. They're going to get the worst of it because they were the worst persecutors. So we go back to Romans 11. He's able to graft them in again. If you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild, cut out of the wild beast, and you were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated, good olive tree, a domesticated olive tree, how great, how much more shall those which were of the good olive tree, the natural branches, be grafted back into their own olive tree? You don't believe that, you Gentiles, especially those of you of the Japheth persuasion. You don't believe it because you are high-minded. Paul warned you not to be high-minded. What did you do? You refused to listen to Paul. You rejected the words of Paul, and so with that rejection comes what happens in Ezekiel 39. Fire. And he's speaking to the Romans here. Let's get some context here. Where is Rome located? Directly in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Who is that fire going to come down on? Written in Ezekiel 39. Magog and those who dwell carelessly in the Mediterranean Sea. Rome. What does that mean then? That means Rome didn't listen to Paul. Verse 25, for I would not, Roman brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery. Why did he say that? Because they obviously were ignorant of this mystery. And still are. And they are because they refuse to accept the new covenant. How do I know they refuse to accept the new covenant? The answer is right here, folks. As soon as I can find it. I have to. Come on now. There we go. Right here. Here's how I know the Gentiles have refused to accept the new covenant. The answer? This in orange is the land that the British Mandate promise to the Jews. What's going on? Why are the Jews still scattered? And why is it that the Gentiles, the Christians and the Muslims, are trying to make sure that Israel does not get its land back? Because they want no part of the new covenant. That's why. Now, we will continue in Romans 11. I would not that you be ignorant of this mystery. They wanted to remain ignorant, and they still are. But Paul's words must stand. And if all the Gentiles reject the words of Paul, then all the Gentiles must fall. That you should be wise in your own conceits. That blindness has happened to Israel in part until the time of the Gentiles come to the full, or the time of the Gentiles come to an end. And so every Israelite shall be saved. No, you don't believe that. You Gentiles, you can never believe it. You won't believe it. Even though Paul told you that before they believe, even though that Ezekiel 39 says before they believe, they're going to be saved. But you don't believe that. You can't believe it. You're unable to believe it. And that's the reason why the tribulation is coming upon you Gentiles. That's the reason why Jehovah's hand is going to be laid down upon you Gentiles, and a fire is going to be sent to you. That's the reason. All Israel shall be saved, because it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, who will turn away unholiness from Jacob, because this is my covenant, the new covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. You see, you don't believe that Jehovah is going to take away Israel's sins. Why is that? Because it doesn't fit your narrative. This is the covenant. This is not just any covenant. This is the new covenant. Let's go to, we'll just go to Jeremiah 31. All right, Jeremiah 31. Where it says right here, look here, you're going to plant vines in the mountains of Samaria. The Gentiles say, no, you won't. In fact, I'm saying right now, folks, watch, watch, watch. Now more than ever. Because in a couple of months, Israel is planning on annexing parts of Judea and Samaria. And the whole world has let Israel know that it's a violation of international law or inter-Gentile law. And they won't stand for it. Which means they will back up Jordan when Jordan decides to attack Israel from the east. Zechariah 14. But who wins? If the chapter of the New Covenant says that Israelites will be indeed planting on the mountains of Samaria again, that means that Gentiles are going to lose. So, it says right here, for thus saith Jehovah, Sing of gladness for Jacob and shout among the chief of nations. Publish praise and say, Jehovah, save your people, the remnant of... Who are the chief of nations? Who are the chief of the Gentiles? The answer is the sons of Japheth. Rosh, where the name Russia comes from. Chief of nations, that would be the children of Japheth. All right. Verse 8, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coast of the land. Going to bring them out from the north and gather them from the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea. And with them the blind and the lame and the women with child and those that travail with child together, a great company shall return. All right, and what it says right here. For Jehovah has redeemed Jacob and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he. Who is that? The Gentile. Ransomed him from the Gentile. Then when you go down here, look, look, look. This is the chapter of the new covenant, folks. Jeremiah 31. Behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. They broke that covenant, even though I was their husband, saith Jehovah. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days. After what days? Are you ready? Are you ready? After what days? Immediately after the tribulation of those days. That's what days. So the time when the sun and the moon are going to be darkened and the stars fall from heaven, that's when the children of Israel are going to be given the new covenant. After those days, saith Jehovah, I will put my Torah in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they will no longer teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Jehovah, for they shall all know me. No exception. They will all know him. All Israel will. From the least of them to the greatest of them, saith Jehovah, for I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more. Romans 11. For this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. That is what Paul was talking about. And if you don't believe that's what Paul was talking about, all you have to do is read Hebrews 8, verses 8 through 12, and you will learn that that's what Paul was talking about. Now, concerning the gospel, they might be hostile for your sakes, O Roman, O you who live in the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea, but concerning the election, you see, the words of Isaiah 45, verse 4, stands. They are the elect for the patriarchs' sakes, because the gifts and the calling of Jehovah cannot change, cannot be repented of. So their status as the elect remains forever. So when you go to Matthew 24 and you read this, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other, you can make bank on the fact that that is referring to the 12 tribes of Israel. if you choose to follow Cyril of Jerusalem, that's your fault. You have freedom of choice. You can be like Rahab, a friend to the Jews, a friend to Israel. You can be like Ruth, who said to her Jewish mother-in-law, "Your people are my people. Your Elohim is my Elohim. Wherever you go, I will go." You could be like that. Or you can side with Israel's enemies and receive just reward. But that's on you. Once again, this pandemic is keeping the eyes of the people off of the possibility of annexing Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley, and that would put the king of Jordan in a predicament that he simply cannot escape from. He's either got to do one of two things. He's either going to have to go to war with Israel and lose, or refuse to go to war against Israel and be toppled. You see? So, in July, in a couple of months, this is expected to happen. And when it does, read Zechariah 14 and read it carefully. And watch events and see if they match. Because if they do, there's your sign.